You two, it's time for another video. Back in a older spot of near my living situation, but this video is going to be mostly about one thing and how I think that just again it's needs to be said. But with this every day that this Iran war keeps going on, I finally am starting to see maybe a little bit of optimism in. Not so much anything like the economy or the Iran war ending or the world becoming way less unhinged due to social media and internet addiction, but at least I'm starting to see younger men realize how much MAGA conned them. They're not saying it out loud because nobody wants to admit to getting suckered, but I've been talking to more and more people at the gyms that I work out at, and a lot of them, first of all, one, I don't see any MAGA hats anymore. And I work out in a pretty, historically red area of a red state, I should say. The state's kind of purplish, but um, I would say it's mostly red. And definitely the suburbs area that I live in is a pretty red area just because a lot of suburbs I've noticed are kind of conservative, maybe not like hardcore um, like traditional conservative or Christian conservative or anything, but they just for some reason like view like the city as scary, and therefore it's and the cities are all blue. Almost every major city is blue, even ones like Dallas or Houston, which are um, you know Texas is a very red area. Some people say it's purple now. I'll believe it when I see it. But Houston and Dallas, the actual cities, are obviously quite blue. Um, Same thing with other things, like, for example, a lot of people talk about both Georgia and Virginia as purple states, with, I would say, like, Georgia's purple but leans red, and Virginia is like purple but leans blue. But the major cities of, like, Richmond, Virginia Beach, Atlanta, these are all like very blue areas when you look at the county breakdowns. So but when you look at like suburbs, which I'll admit I don't really know the suburbs of those states because I've never really been there, but I'd like to visit. I went to Miami recently, and I'd like to go to Atlanta to see what it's like because I like visiting cities that and looking at the demographics and seeing why, you know, is this issue where my area is like kind of this aging population where senior living communities are cropping up everywhere. Um, are we seeing that, in other cities? And a city like Atlanta, which is, what, top 10 large metro. In fact, I'm pretty sure Miami and Atlanta go back and forth for top five, but I could be wrong on that. But anyway, I work out pretty red area. The day after Trump won in 2024, saw MAGA shit everywhere. People, not everywhere, but like plenty of people walked in. I was seeing them at the gym, thinking that they're like, they got their masculine guy. Keep in mind Trump is 80 years old almost and can barely go up a flight of steps and is on tweeting on Twitter and Truth Social like a middle school girl with the level of bitchiness and sassiness, and he's also routinely crapping his own pants and is soiling himself. So but keep in mind, if that's what masculinity is to you, then I mean, uh, that's sad. But the more people I've talked to recently, and again, the gyms I work out at, it's mostly older dudes who have like divorced dad energy, and younger men who have like, I don't know if I'd call them like followers of Andrew Tate, but it does kind of feel like they all gravitated towards that subculture to a degree. But when you talk to them, I mean, you kind of get to know them, and there's more nuance to these things. Like, not everybody who has a divorced dad energy, and even ones who are conservative, are like necessarily complete MAGA drones. And I've noticed a lot of these type of dudes, younger and older men, I think are finally starting to realize that Kamala would have been a better candidate by a long shot. Now, specifically because I talk to guys younger than me at the gyms and the few social places I go to, because my workplace is mostly Gen Xers and I am a youngish millennial, 90s born millennial. I've noticed that, so I don't really want to talk to old people at the gym because I see them enough in the workplace. But when I talk to when I go to social events, it's again mostly the gym. But when I go to places outside and you have a few small conversations with younger people, they're kind of realizing that that's all a con job. The whole thing, whether it's, MAGA, Republican, Trump, JD Vance, and the voting Republican Party, whether it's like hustle culture, and like, you got to have five side projects in your life that are all generating passive income, whether it's Andrew Tate Manosphere, take my course on how to get women. All of it's just the same fucking shit, really. It's men who are lonely, isolated, depressed, looking for answers, and are frustrated with the dating game. And unfortunately, I think they took way too much of their anger out on women. I agree that like women do seem to reject men a lot, and even men who are reasonable, I think, get rejected probably a little too much. Obviously, women are allowed to choose who they want to date or not date at all, but at the same time, it's like you can't sit here and say, you know, these patriarchal gender roles hurt men too, but then you don't give a man an opportunity to be like a nurturing man or whatever. Um, it does kind of come down to dating to a degree, and at least, companionship and a level of respect. And I see more just social isolation than anything. Um, I don't think it's entirely, people overly, I think people overly blame feminism, but I do think feminism has some criticisms that are reasonable, or there are some reasonable criticisms of the movement, I should say. But again, the major thing is that a lot of these subcultures that creeped up throughout the 2010s and into the 2020s, these things operate the exact same way with the level of bitchiness and sassiness and cattiness that the militant side of feminists have. There are very reasonable women who are, probably supporters of feminism, and I don't have any problem with any of the reasonable people in the feminist movement. I have some criticisms of the people who overly subscribe to everything's just a product of socialization, which I think is brain dead. But at the same time, MAGA is the same mentality as militant, the most extreme feminists. It's always somebody else's fault. It's all about building a social media brand and complaining online over and over again. It's all rooted in like and subscribe culture. It's all rooted in all these things that are basically just trying to capitalize on people's anger. And it's not really about building up and helping out people and improving their lives. And I think that's the thing that really pisses me off about social media in general. None of it really has made our lives really better. Yeah, there's a small amount of people who got to reach that, monetizable subscriber count of, whatever number it is. Anywhere between like what, like once you start getting like what, like 30,000 views a video, and if you release a video once every few days, that's pretty monetizable, and you might make, maybe a couple $1,000s a month, I think is how much that would add up to be. But most people don't do that. Most people, again, I've been doing these videos now. I don't know if like the algorithm just doesn't pick up on my shit, or if people just don't care enough, but or if it's just so poorly produced that nobody wants to watch it, which is possible. But I like to think my content is, at least, watchable or listenable. But I'm not here to really like make a lot of money off of this. I have my actual job, and we'll see how much longer before AI ruins everything or whatever. But, I've been able to at least, put money away into like a 401k and shit. And I have some sort of a fund there, which hopefully grows. But then again, the main thing I see is if nobody has work, then, all of these companies don't grow either. So then your 401k is worthless kind of in a sense too. And that's kind of the point where I'm at, where it's like, it does seem like to me that like an interesting form of black pill mentality is creeping up. I don't think it's complete doomerist black pill. I think it's more like an apathetic plus black pill mentality. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think more and more people are just like kind of like not caring, combined with, also like if they have an opportunity to fuck over somebody that maybe deserves to be fucked over, they'll do it. Um, a good example of this is there's been a couple of recent studies, or not studies, but stories, news stories about a large chunk of, like not data centers, warehouses. Also with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, I believe. He had his house, like a Molotov cocktail thrown at his house. And a lot of these warehouses, I don't think it's the data centers, but it's like things like warehouses, like Amazon warehouses. These things some of them have been set afire recently. And, I don't necessarily support that. But at the same time, I'm not going to really, like, sit here and act like that this stuff doesn't, I don't understand why it's happening. It's like, no, I understand why it's happening. All of these websites that were algorithmically designed, especially in the algorithm age of the past 15 or so years, they kept, they really ruined people's social lives. And I think that, a lot of these websites probably need to be, like, severely changed, including this one, including YouTube. I also can't stand when you meet, sometimes you meet people who say, like, I've deleted all my social media, and I'm like, well, you're on YouTube, and that's social media, When people say the social media age, it's basically like 2007, 8-ish to the present, and it kind of, and like the 07, 08 to like 2015 era was one era, then we have like the 2015 to today era, which is mostly just everyone's a doomer now. People aren't having as much fun. The internet's not fun anymore, if you ask me. It's just filled with anger, misery, and anxiety. So why are we still on these platforms all the time, I just recently went to a local arcade in my area to try to play some old games, pinball games, Pac-Man. Remember Time Crisis? That was more recent, like maybe like that was like early 2000s, and you'd have a buddy, and you had to press these pedals to, like, if you released the pedal, you'd go undercover so you wouldn't take damage, but you wouldn't be able to fire your gun. And then if you pressed the pedal, you'd, like, pop off, like you'd be behind, like, a little box or something in the game, and then you'd press the pedal on the bottom of the arcade cabinet, and you'd pop up and you'd be able to, like, shoot the bad guys or whatever. And, like, I remember this very arcade when I was, still in high school, was, like, busy on Friday nights. And I just recently went down, past it, and it was like, man, it was empty. And it was like, 20 years ago, that place was, okay, maybe not the coolest people, maybe not the hottest girls were there, but, like, you would go there, and there'd be a bunch of people, including, some girls, too. I mean, some would be there. It's not like, girls like to play video games, and, people were talking, and you'd hear a lot of laughing, and the cabinets would be loud as fuck, and, yeah, I think they served alcohol back then there, too. But I was, 10 years too young. Well, I mean, like 7 years too young to drink. And now you go back. I'm a little surprised this place is still fucking open. So I guess it deserves some props for that. But, like, nobody was there. And you're just like, man, on a Friday night, there was like 3 people in the parking lot. And one of them was probably an employee. Maybe 2 of them were employees. I don't know. So anyway, younger men, MAGA ain't your friends. They don't care about you. The older men in MAGA, especially inside the Trump regime, they're sending you to go die, and then they're going to hoard your women, including the women that are too young to be dating, because they're the ones in the Epstein. Well, there's probably some legal-aged girls in the Epstein files too, but there were underage girls in the Epstein files, and it's just like, this is the world we live in. Younger men shouldn't really support. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, the Democratic Party really cares about younger men, but I think it's enough to support them over what the modern conservative movement is about. Older dudes are the number one thing holding back younger men. It's not women. I wish women in general were more interested in dating. I do, and I think that is part of the problem. But older men hoarding wealth, hoarding opportunity, this is the biggest concern. And most of those people tend to be conservative. Just my thoughts, and I'm out.